Hi, I'm Jennifer Sir, owner of the Sewing Room in Alameda, California. And today I'm talking with my brilliant friend, Jennifer Heller of Here Comes the Apocalypse. She's an expert in emergency preparedness, climate resilience, and generally keeping it together when the world feels a little wild. Today, we're connecting the dots between climate change, emergency planning, and what's hanging in your closet. Because, yes, your fashion choices do make a difference. Whether it's what you wear, how you care for your clothes, or how often you buy new ones, your wardrobe has the power to shape a more sustainable future. So grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and let's talk apocalypse one garment at a time. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the Sewing Room, and thanks for being here today.
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to get talking about fast fashion, climate change, and also emergency preparedness. So, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about Here Comes the Apocalypse?
Yes, so I created Here Comes Apocalypse because when I tried to create a disaster plan for my family, I found the process so mind-numbingly boring. It made me want to gouge my eyes out. I just couldn't figure out what to do first. So I created a fun website that tries to add fun and jokes and really good design and break it down step by step. And along the way, I created a step-by-step guide, the disaster playbook, which gives you just like it's basically a workbook for your emergency plan. I feel like a lot of people think that just having some canned food and some flashlights and some water is an emergency plan, and that's great, and we all need that. But we also need things like designated meeting places and a communication plan in case we can't reach each other.
Awesome. Awesome. I can't wait to get started with my kit. I have it and I'm ready to go. Um, okay, let's dig into some of the questions today. So, fast fashion is already a problem, right? But in the middle of a climate crisis, is it making things worse?
I definitely think so. I mean, I think that fast fashion is really the result of this disposable way of life that we've been sold over the years. And, the history of this, I think, is really, really interesting because I'm really interested in advertising and I majored in cognitive science, which is how people think. And people, when in the 50s, well, plastic was created in like early 1900s. So fast fashion is a result of plastic because it is created from fossil fuels. Mostly it's plastic clothes. I'm not wearing it right now, but I do have plastic on my body and lots of my clothes, it's plastic. And, in the beginning, when we were getting plastic stuff, it was really durable and it was made to last and it was a long time. And the plastics industry was like, well, shoot, if we can only sell people, one set of plastic cups, then we're not going to make as much money. And so they started a very deliberate campaign to teach us to be disposable. And so, like, the fact that we have this disposable lifestyle where we buy clothes and then throw them away and then it's all planned and deliberate, and the goal is profits, right? And it's at the expense of our climate and our planet.
Absolutely. That's a great way of putting it all, for sure. Yeah. What's one way our clothes are connected to climate change that most people don't realize?
Well, I think that's really about the fact that they oil and petroleum is cr somehow I don't know how it works, right? What a crazy thing that you could take oil and, like, spit out a pair of leggings, right? Like, that's
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting so polyester, which is made from fossil fuels, from plastic, basically extrudes fibers that get woven together. Yeah, so that's how or knitted, but it's a process of extruding fibers out of chemicals.
that's so crazy, and
Yeah,
yeah, so, if the oil and gas companies hadn't realized this, then we would probably still be wearing, natural textiles, but instead.
instead we wear plastic. Yeah,
Right, and the fact that the fashion industry teaching us, "Oh, you have to change your look every 6 months or 3 months or whatever," right? That is so that they can make more money off of the oil and gas company is in connection with the fashion industry, and they're both just like, again, brainwashing us into thinking we need all this stuff, and we're so divorced from where everything comes from. that we don't realize the cost of it. I don't think that anybody walking down the street realizes the cost of it, you know?
I don't think so either. I really don't. I mean, just knowing that that we're wearing plastic is one thing, but the actual toxicity of what happens when when we're either wearing plastic, using plastic, or throwing plastic away, like what happens when that? I mean, it's really serious. The off gassing and the chemicals absorb into your body, and it's really not good.
Yeah, they have found microplastics in human ovaries and in testicles. I mean, I try to say to my sister who gets freaked out about this, I'm like, we got to embrace our inner cyborg, because we are one with our world, and our world is overrun with all this plastic. And so, we don't really have a choice. And so, I try not to obsess about it, right? Especially like with my kids, right? It's very hard to get clothes that don't have polyester in them or like rayon,
Yeah.
or some form of plastic. And like there are some really cute little kids. I have a 3-year-old daughter and she looks so cute, these little dresses, and I do buy them used on primarily like ThreadUp or Poshmark because I really want to, and I'll go to thrift stores, but that's a little bit harder because there just aren't as many in the Bay Area where we live, as there used to be. But, I try not to think too hard about the microplastics in my kids because then you could really freak out. Or, same in your body too. There's so many things not to think about in this world.
There are lots of things not to think about, but we do have to think about them a little bit.
Yes.
And speaking of thinking about things, you help people plan ahead. How do the choices we make with our clothing now impact the world we're preparing for?
I love this because long time ago, started purchasing with my values. And I started looking at the world and thinking, okay, what's the world I want? And how are my dollars supporting that world or supporting the world I don't want? And the reality of capitalism is that it is built on infinite growth, right? It's like cancer. You have to like constantly eat things and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And like that's the way the stock market works, right? Stocks have to constantly go up so that people can get rich. And our planet just can't sustain it. There's no way. So everything we purchase is a vote for the life we want to see. So what I want to see is a circular economy. I want to see a culture of reuse and repair. And so I try really hard to only support businesses that share these values. And of course, it's not always possible, but I do my best. And, with what I have, like, I always try to make it last as long as possible, right? Like, yeah, I mean, you know how it is. Like, sometimes you want something new, right? And it's so easy because you're constantly marketed to on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, all these new things. But, you can also make something new from what you have, right? And that's what I love what you're doing in the world is like teaching people to like turn what they have into new things or to create something from scratch because sewing is so empowering and just really fun also.
Yeah, I mean, also when you're sewing, you learn what it takes to make
Yes.
something, and then you have a better perception about what goes into the clothes you make. And so,
Well,
yeah, yeah,
and that, goes into like the supply chain issues with fast fashion, right? That like
yeah.
many of these all of these factories, probably these people aren't paid well, and I've read some really disturbing things about the way Shane and H&M deal with factories where they'll like place an order and then the clothes will be made or partially made and then they'll cancel the order because people don't aren't buying the fashion that they thought they were going to buy and then they don't pay the factory, right? And so all of this wa- textile waste, plastic textile waste just goes into landfill, not to mention the dyes that were used to dye it. And it's very upsetting.
Yeah, and also the transportation that it took to get the fibers to the mill to make the fabric, then to the factory. And, I mean, there's like a carbon footprint for every little thing that it takes to make a garment. And then those poor people probably don't get paid who
Right.
are working on it. Yeah. So, Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes a lot. Like I have some underwear that I need to mend and I'm just like, "Oh man, it's going to be a half hour, right, to just sew this seam." And so you just think about like, well, somebody made those underwear, right? And
Yep.
my underwear are actually made in the US. So like I try to buy things that are made in the US for stuff that I have to buy if possible, but it's very, very hard.
Yes, it's very hard. And I can teach you how to make your own underwear,
All
which
right.
is pretty awesome. But most likely all that fabric is going to come from China. So yeah, we have all of this. The transportation part is just what really gets me all the time.
So we need to figure out a circular economy for
Yeah,
textiles here.
exactly. A circular economy. And actually, can you talk to us a little bit about a circular economy and what that means? Because I think not everybody understands that yet.
The circular economy, well, maybe I don't know, but it's like where you know where things go, right?
Yeah.
So you are here. Well, okay, so I'll talk about one of my favorite places. I like to refill instead of buy new things. Like so I go to this refill store in Oakland. And so I have started using their face products, like, cleanser and other things. And so they are made there in Oakland. Like a woman-owned business makes this stuff and gives it to the refill shop. And then I take my little jar, right? And I go there and I fill it up and then I come home and I use it and then I go there and and so at no point is anything going into the landfill, right? I mean, probably in the making of the cosmetics, like some things do go in the landfill. However, right, in my little piece of it, my piece is completely circular. I know the people who make it. I can get it locally. It's made locally, right? The carbon footprint on that is very low. And similarly, like I like to shop from the farmers market. So like those people, well, a bunch of them drive in, a couple hours, but the I saw something where people were saying, "Oh, well, we don't need to worry about tariffs because every state makes bananas. Every state grows bananas."
What?
Because people don't understand because they think because they can buy it at the store that like
Like, I don't think they grow bananas in Alaska
we certainly do not grow
or
bananas
Nebraska.
anywhere,
I mean,
right? Like all bananas.
all bananas come from somewhere else, right? I don't think they're made in the U.S. Like, they're not grown in
Hawaii has banana farm or no.
the
Well, anyway,
Anyway, yeah.
research needed. But yeah, people don't understand this, right? And so by getting stuff from the farmers market, I'm contributing to the circular economy. So I explained it maybe by way of examples, and I'll look up the
No, I,
definition.
I think those are great examples. In the fashion world, we think of the circular economy as using natural textiles that can then regenerate the land once they go get thrown away, that they actually go into the land and add healthy nutrients into the compost, and then something can grow from that compost. So there's different levels of circularity, but as much as we can clearly do to be a circular economy, the better, and to use materials that are already existing instead of trying to create more new materials. Um,
We
okay.
have a compost bin, and my husband put a sock in it, and I was just like, "You can't put socks in the compost bin, sweetie, because they're
They
if
have
you
elastic in them
they're
usually.
cotton." And I'm like, "But the elastic is plastic, sweetie." And so like I don't know, it's still in there, and every time I harvest the compost, I have to take the sock out. I mean, it is breaking down slowly, but
Yeah.
I mean, I
The
already knew there's microplastics in my soil, so
the smart wool socks might be different. If those are 100% wool, then they can
okay,
go in the compost bin. Yeah.
cool. It's still they take longer than my compost. I need to turn over in like 3 months. I need to only, things that worms will eat quickly.
Yes, I don't tend to mine as often as that, but I do have a compost bin. One
Oh,
time
that's cool.
one time I came out, I hadn't tended to it in a while, obviously because I had avocados growing. Avocado seeds had sprouted and came out of the compost bin. But and then one we took out. Well, we took
Implanted?
we took out three avocados and I planted them all, and one just went crazy and now it's in our backyard. So
That's awesome. Do you have
hopefully
avocados yet?
Not yet. Maybe in 10 years. Who knows?
Yeah, it takes a long time.
Long time. Okay. I have one last oh no, I have a couple more questions. Okay. Would you say that knowing how to fix your own clothes is a survival skill?
100%. I think and making your own clothes is a survival kit too, a survival skill. I have a little sewing kit in my go bag, right? And it's like not the best thread or whatever, but at least I have it. And then I've got duct tape. You can always just duct tape your clothes back together, right? If you really have to.
Yeah.
And I always joke that I have like a lot of yarn, like a lot. For many, many years, and
Yes.
so I always joke that, like, if the economy completely collapses, I can sell hats at the side of the road, like, so I've got, a skill that I might be able to use to barter for some food or whatever if things get really bad, and of course, we don't want it to get that bad, and hopefully I love our way of life. I named the company Here Comes the Apocalypse because I thought it was funny, and, but I didn't really think the apocalypse was that close. Now I'm like, "Oh, no,"
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we don't need to think about that right now.
No, no,
Um
it's not. Yeah.
okay. Do you if you were building a climate crisis capsule wardrobe, what would be in it and how could it be sustainable?
Yes. Well, so number 1, thrift, whatever, like, and what I put in my go bag for my climate crisis, is just my maternity clothes because I didn't need them anymore and they still kind of fit and they don't look great, but I just stuck them in there, right? Like, so I have a maternity sweatshirt that'll keep me warm and like some maternity pants. If I was like really going to invest in a climate crisis capsule wardrobe, it would 100% be linen and wool, right? Like a wool base layer,
Mhm.
because that'll keep you warm whether you're hot, whether it's wet or dry. So if it gets wet, it's not a big deal. Wool socks, that sort of thing, and then, like, linen pants. One thing that people don't really realize is that, plastic clothing, like acrylic and polyester, burns much hotter and faster. So, if you're unfortunately in a situation that has fire and you're wearing cotton or linen or wool, you're going to come out in better shape than if you're wearing, acrylic or rayon or polyester. And obviously, nobody wants to be in that situation, but that's something to think about even in your normal life because the climate crisis is here, right? And so, if we can make some decisions that help to create a more circular world and have more sustainable fashion, then we're doing a small part to help fight the climate crisis.
Absolutely. Can you think of any other fashion related ways that we can help with the climate crisis?
Well, I think we want to fight against like single use fashion, right? Like the t-shirts for, a marathon run or whatever, right? Like how can you I understand the desire and I work in branding, right? Like I love making swag. I love it. But it's also most swag is created to then be thrown away. And, so how can you, all of us, with our voices at our workplaces and everything, fight for a better world that way, right? Like say, oh no, we don't need those one-off t-shirts. Let's just make pins, right? Like the pins will be trash too, but they're less trash, and or I think about like people are always like, "Oh, I want a Here Comes Apocalypse t-shirt." And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to make them, right? I don't want to make them." And most t-shirts are not going to last, right? So like maybe an iron-on transfer so that people could put it on an existing t-shirt that they don't like the thing on, the pattern or the design on, that could be a good way of doing it. I've always dreamt of creating go bags for people just from thrifted stuff, right? Like just collecting stuff and then parceling it out for people so that they get stuff in their size and they can wear it. But
Mhm.
you know but yeah, thrifting, reuse, make things last as long as possible, and bring this awareness to every aspect of your life. It's not fashionable, but I bring to go containers with me to restaurants, right? I try to. And so then when I have leftovers, I put it in my Tupperware and I take it home instead of using a plastic container.
Or like a single use. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, even those compostable ones they send you home with, if your municipal compost can't handle it, then it doesn't work for the compost for the municipal compost bins.
And
So,
one thing that I find really disturbing is most of the US doesn't even have municipal compost. So people are either stuck composting at home, which a lot of people don't do,
right,
or they have no option. So even though we're making things out of paper instead of plastic, which is better, it's still going into landfill,
right.
right? And as long as we're shoveling everything into the landfill, we are so far away from a circular economy.
Well, I would love for people to get to know you a little bit more and learn more about Here Comes the Apocalypse and do some emergency planning. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you or connect with you?
Yes, so the our website is herecomestheapocalypse.com, and I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. And I have a monthly webinar called I'm Sorry You Have to Prep, because I am sorry that you have to prep. I wish that none of us had to do this. I wish that corporations had been held accountable for the last 100 years so that we wouldn't be in this situation, but we are in this situation and it super sucks. So I think that's a great entry point. I also have a Kickstart Your Prep 5-day challenge, which guides you through 5 steps that you probably didn't think about, right? Like I said, disaster prep, most people are like, oh, well, I've got some flashlights on an earthquake kit, I'm good, right? And that's wonderful. And yes, do that. But there is more to it than that. And so the 5-day challenge will give you some things to think about to increase your resilience. And I think it is about resilience, right? It's about being able to be faced with something that's unexpected and come out smiling, right? Or come out at least in okay shape.
Right.
Um, my in-laws lost their home to a California wildfire, and watching what they went through very much influenced Here Comes Apocalypse and the disaster playbook and everything I have.
Yeah, we just had a tsunami warning earlier this year, and like I didn't have a go bag. I didn't have something to get me to higher ground. Like I could have just driven out of Alameda, but I didn't have stuff to take with me. I had nothing ready. I just
Right.
called my friend, and she said, "We'll go upstairs."
I mean, yeah, that's something.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think, especially trying to get out of Alameda in a situation like that, there's going to be wall to wall traffic, yeah. So having a plan that, um, like maybe it's just around the highest point, like a parking garage that's really tall that you could go to and be on that. Because I really think that I wasn't in Berkeley when that tsunami warning happened, but I heard anecdotally from people that it was just impossible to go anywhere. And it's unreasonable for the people in emergency communications for the city to expect everybody to evacuate in an urban area like this. Like we just can't. And so we need better planning from our cities, from our city government, and since we're not necessarily going to get that, we should lobby our government for it. I recommend that. But you know, instead we want to have that plan. So if you pick, a parking structure that's really tall, and then you make sure that, your husband knows too that that's where you're meeting, right? In case he's not home.
Right. Right.
Because I mean, a tsunami could really wreak some havoc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I take a lot of apocalyptic inspiration from fiction, and I read Gone with the Wind when I was pregnant when actually after my first child was born. And I think a lot about the way Scarlett O'Hara went from being this lady of leisure to turning her velvet curtains into dresses to try to convince Rhett Butler that she was still like, you know, doing okay. And that story, I love that story because it's like about fashion. It's about like having to reuse like these beautiful, beautiful curtains and turn them into a dress. But it really opened my eyes to how fast everything can change, right? Like her world went belly up like in very few minutes. Like, I mean, I think it was months, right?
Yeah.
And if our world changes like that, and it's looking increasingly likely like we're going to see some pretty substantial changes before things get better, just because the people in charge aren't going to change their fossil fueling ways before that happens. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Knowing how to turn curtains into dresses might come in handy.
That was actually my first introduction to upcycling when I was little. It was one of my favorite movies growing up.
It's a wonderful
Yeah,
movie.
it is a wonderful movie. Yeah.
The book is also really, really, really good, but very sad. Very
Yeah.
sad.
Very
Yeah.
sad.
I won't read it again.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for being with me today here on our YouTube channel. I'm really excited for other people to learn about Here Comes the Apocalypse because I think it's a wonderful idea and a wonderful plan of action in a time when we need it the most.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. Huge thanks to Jennifer Heller of Here Comes the Apocalypse for sharing her insights and reminding us that sustainability isn't just about style, it's about survival. If you enjoyed the conversation, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop your favorite takeaway in the comments. You can also visit me at thesewingroomalameda.com for more on slow fashion, mindful making, and community classes. I'm going to link all of Jennifer's contact information and the information to her website, Here Comes the Apocalypse, in the show notes. So be sure to take a look before you go. And until next time, keep sewing, keep learning, and remember, the future is handmade.